The newest release of the Book of Boba Fett is finally here, and today's episode, episode 4, was definitely something much different than we've gotten before. We got a fantastic look at the brewing gang war, Black Krrsantan finally joining Boba's crime family, as well as a massive Easter egg pointing to Din Djarin teaming up with Boba Fett to take down the Pykes with the darksaber in hand. So let's break down everything that went down in the episode and how it connects to the other Star Wars books, comics, and TV shows. As usual, remember to leave your episode rating out of 10 in the comments and subscribe for a whole lot more Book of Boba Fett content throughout the show. So the episode begins right back inside of Boba's Bacta tank, where he is violently thrown back into a flashback sequence that we're all very used to by now. As Boba is riding his Bantha, he immediately passes the remains of a Krayt Dragon, which is very likely the same one seen in A New Hope. That one itself was actually the skeleton of a Greater Krayt Dragon, meaning it was much stronger and more fierce than a normal one. After this, Boba arrives at Jabba's palace and points his rifle down at the lurking Krrsantan striders who have just done business there, but can't take the shot because there are too many guards. As we cut back to his campsite in the desert, we actually see that Tatooine has 3 moons, finally recanonizing that awesome little fact and bringing it back into live action. The names of these moons are Gomrasin, Gurmesa, and Chinini. While Boba is sitting under the 3 moons of Tatooine, he immediately notices a group of rising flashes in the sand behind him. Now, you may remember these flashes from The Mandalorian Season 1, Episode 5, where Toro Calican and Din Djarin hunted after Fenix. This scene is literally pulled straight from that episode, except just from Boba Fett's perspective. Another cool little Easter egg is that they actually play the familiar Mandalorian horn sound, just to remind us that this is pulled directly from that series. And make sure you remember this little Easter egg, as it will be very important at the end of the video. After this, Boba Fett walks up and finds the nearly dead Fenix, who was sadly left for dead on the sands of Tatooine. He then collects her and brings her back into town, where he comes across the young street mods from the last episode, but obviously this time it's in the past timeline. These guys might be from a different gang of Vespa riders, but they're certainly into the same aesthetics. Following this, Boba drops a pile of cash on the table and demands that the modders mod Fenix in order to keep her alive. They're a bit hesitant at first, but the cash instantly changes their mind and they begin the work. As we saw from the last episode, these guys have plenty of experience turning humans into cyborgs with various droid parts, so the job is done very effectively. Finally, they fix up Fenix and get the blood pumping through her artificial veins. Obviously, we already saw this reveal in The Mandalorian on Tython, but it's nice to see exactly how it went down. As Boba reveals what he's done to Fenix in order to save her life, she is shocked, but he insists that she drink some water from a black melon. This is a really cool little Easter egg and connection to the Star Wars 2015 comic run, where the black melons were officially named and introduced into the canon by Obi-Wan Kenobi. These things are vital to the Tusken Raiders, so it makes a ton of sense that Boba Fett makes great use of them. He was obviously taught very well during his time with them. After Fenix accepts the black melon, Boba Fett reveals that she is a master assassin from the mid-rim of the galaxy. This is actually brand new information, as we had no idea about her origin or homeworld before this. Although just saying mid-rim doesn't really narrow it down at all. Hey, maybe she's from Naboo. During his explanation of what happened on that tragic day at the Sarlacc pit, Fenix says Boba is dead, indicating that she was either nearby on the day that Jabba's sail barge went down, or that the legend has spread so fast that Fenix was able to hear about it. Whichever one it is, it will be fascinating to see what it means for Fenix's origin story. Further into their conversation, Boba Fett mentions that he wants to rescue his fire spray gunship from Jabba's palace, which is now under the control of Bib Fortuna. The ship is actually a gunship class vessel because it used to serve as a patrol vehicle at one of the galaxy's toughest and most highly secured prisons, known as Uvo 4 in the Outer Rim. The ship's full model is a Firespray 31 class patrol and attack craft, and Jango Fett is the one who steals it in the awesome Bounty Hunter PlayStation game. If you haven't played it, make sure you check that out because it really is a good game. Not long after this, Fenix sends in a spy droid to investigate the palace and see who really runs the place. Inside, we see 2 Gamorrean guards who will eventually become Boba's guards in the present timeline, as well as a horde of Nikto bikers from the Krrsantan striders. And just in case you haven't seen last week's breakdown video, the Krrsantan striders actually get their name from the board game Din Djarin, where there is a piece called the Krrsantan strider. The strider is a very powerful creature both in the game and very likely out in the galaxy. You wouldn't want to come up against one of those in the wild. At the fireplace where Fenix and Boba are preparing for their raid on Jabba's palace, Fenix asks Boba if he wants to lead a qi'ra. In Star Wars, a qi'ra is a type of criminal syndicate which operates mostly stealthily and conducts criminal operations in the shadows. The one qi'ra we currently know of in canon is actually an extremist group who fights for droid rights across the galaxy, especially after the Clone Wars. They are known as the Droid qi'ra. They serve as the muscle and firepower of the Krymora crime syndicate, striking fear into organic beings across the galaxy. So who knows, maybe the Krymora crime syndicate will show up. As Boba and Fenix begin their stealth heist of Jabba's palace, they break through the sewer grill from outside and we get a look inside of the palace kitchen, where an assortment of droids are seen cooking the lavish foods for the occupants. These include EV-99, who showed up in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi, as well as working as a bartender at Chow Mun's cantina in The Mandalorian. There is also a Coup series cook droid, which is the same model seen in Attack of the Clones on Padme and Anakin's freighter to Naboo. As they continue towards the hangar, the two encounter a Lep droid, which first appeared in the Clone Wars movie, but featured in numerous episodes, including being owned by Dr. Nuvo Vindi and Tan Devo. The Lep droid causes absolute havoc in the kitchen as Boba chases after it, practically destroying half the place just to find it. Once Boba does find the poor droid, it begins sobbing, and Boba slams it into a wall, bullying the little fella until it turns itself off. Very cute, but also a sad scene. Moving back into the hangar, Boba arrives at his infamous ship known as Slave 1, and in the background you can see a cool little gonk droid waddling into its hiding spot. Gonk droids provide portable power and sometimes are even involved in a religious cult, but that is a story for another time. Boba and Fennec eventually get into a massive firefight with the Nikto gang members, and one of them even drops the word Slimo, which as you probably remember was first heard in The Phantom Menace, and literally just means slime ball. Boba Fett then gets himself into the Slave 1 and powers up its systems, while Fennec tragically kills the gonk droid in order to blow up its power cells. It certainly worked, but it's always sad to see a gonk droid go down. Following this, Fennec agrees to stay with Boba for the foreseeable future, and they immediately make off in Slave 1 to settle some scores. This includes absolutely obliterating a group of Nikto bikers with turrets from the ship. The two even fly over the wreckage of Jabba's sail barge and the Sarlacc pit from Return of the Jedi, which is obviously a very traumatic and emotional location for Boba to return to. Boba believes his armor will still be inside the Sarlacc after all these years, to which Fennec believes that it would have been dissolved by now in the acid of the pit. Boba however retorts this by revealing that it is made of Beskar. This is actually a huge statement and finally confirms something that us fans have been wondering since all the way back in the Clone Wars series, and of course The Mandalorian Season 2. Really awesome to finally have that cleared up. After this, Boba almost gets taken into the Sarlacc pit for a second time, but the situation is quickly dispatched by an absolutely awesome seismic charge. I know you guys just went completely silent waiting for that awesome sound. Boba also offers Fennec a Scoria, which were actually first introduced in the A New Hope special editions. He then dives right back into the Sarlacc pit with a rope this time to try to find his armor, but nothing. Obviously, we know that it is with Cobb Vanth by this point in the timeline, but Boba has no idea. Him going back into the pit is also a cool little nod to Star Wars Legends, where Boba got out of the pit and then literally fell back in not too long after. After this, we get one final flashback of The Mandalorian Season 2 post-credit scene, where Boba kills Bib before getting out of the tank. Boba then immediately asks if the mayor's major domo is speaking, to which Fennec tells him that he is singing like a Yuzum. Yuzums were native to the forest moon of Endor, and one named Joe Yowza even sang with the Max Rebo band. So that's why she says singing like a Yuzum. Back at the sanctuary in Mos Espa, we find Black Krrsantan sitting at a booth. I won't go too far into Black Krrsantan's story in this video since I've covered it in the last two breakdowns, but in the description or pinned comment I'll leave a link to the full explainer of his life. After this, Black Krrsantan goes absolutely wild, shredding up all the nearby Trandoshans before being stopped by Madame Garsa Whip. She tells the tales of his time in the fight pits, which were heavily seen in the Star Wars and Dr. Aphra comics. Check out my video on him in the pinned comment for more info on that. Garsa Whip then tries to calm Black K down, but he refuses to listen and instead rips off the arm of the Trandoshan, which is a nice little Easter egg to all the way back in A New Hope where Han warns that Wookiees can rip arms off. Thankfully, Black Krrsantan eventually joins Boba's crime family. This also happened when Chewie ripped off Unkar Plutt's arm in The Force Awakens deleted scenes. Eventually, the former captains of Jabba the Hutt meet with Boba, and they work out a deal on how to go forward. He initially wants them to work together to vanquish the threat of the Pykes Syndicate, but is forced to settle for their neutrality at this time. If the threat happens to be bigger than just the Pykes Syndicate, like Crimson Dawn for example led by qi'ra, it's likely that they'll be forced into a more friendly agreement. Eventually the captains leave and Boba and Fennec go to the balcony of Jabba's palace to discuss the upcoming gang war. Fennec tells Boba that he can buy as much muscle as they need, before ominously ending off with the theme of Din Djarin, the same one we heard when Boba witnessed him using the flashes earlier in the episode. So that tells us pretty much for sure that Mando will be showing up to join the crew in the next episode. The only question is, how big of a role will he play? And will he bring the darksaber with him? So get hyped for that. So that is my full breakdown of Star Wars The Book of Boba Fett Season 1 Episode 4, The Gathering Storm. Thanks so much for watching, really hope you enjoyed the video. Cheers guys, hope to see you in the next one.